This video will concern the election system in the United States and opinions and facts and history recorded about how it evolved over time and the original intentions of the framers of the Constitution and the Founding Fathers, which were based on either naivete or ignorance of human nature in some cases. Archives.gov, Electoral College About, ConstitutionCenter.org, Interactive Constitution Interpretation, Article 2, Clauses 350. Also, Wired Article 2014 about how trolls will always win, and Wikipedia looking up a federated state and various other words people keep misusing. Warning, Donald Trump really lost the Electoral College and the popular vote. The number of votes that have been brought up to question this have been so feeble as to make it a joke that he has now been officially on paper in some states, having run for president and lost once that time, and have been declared the loser several times over, showing that he has literally lost more times than he ran, according to official records in some states. So, someone posted a comment basically under one of my videos. Now, I've said this, I'm going to do an explanation I've done in previous videos, but he also lost the popular vote to Hillary Clinton, and if you did what the Founding Fathers said, Hillary Clinton would have been vice president. And this time, Trump would be vice president, and Biden would be president. That's literally how the law works. I'll explain some details later, but let's get to this point here. Most democratic nations on earth elect a president or the main head of state, that's what it's called, by direct popular vote. The USA uses a very different system. It has a complex, non-uniform process that's based on each state, not of, by, and for the people. It's designed like a Senate, or something of that nature, to filter public opinion through, quote, a deliberative intermediate institution. This was originally composed of members chosen by the state legislatures and alternatively by the legislator doing so, being allowed to argue the point of what their state voted. Then representatives would act as either delivery boys or as actual voters and representatives of the state temporarily done just for the vote for the president. Because it presented this odd sort of problem, like a library that keeps a logbook of all the books in it, but that's one of the books. Do you include itself in itself? To keep some sort of recursive error from happening, they decided to use an electoral college to do the voting, and came up with a splitting hairs problem, and also came up with another problem that individual human beings traveling from, let's say, the state of Oregon now to Washington, D.C. could choose to ignore the vote in the state of Oregon, and there had to be a delay time when they dumped the vote to when it was officially counted so that it can be made sure of any errors and problems. But originally, the members would choose two candidates, first and second choice. The runner-up would become vice president. Political parties were not considered at the time. And or they ignored the fact that certain people would be very ideologically, politically minded at the time, refused to act as a real representative, and be a faithless elector, voting against the will of their state. Let's say you have a state, like let's say the state of Oregon has exactly 8 votes. But Donald Trump won at 51%. That means one of them has to almost act as a faithless elector and vote Trump 5 times and the others 3 for the state to represent itself accurately. Oh, wait a minute, they each get to cast 2 votes. So all of these guys vote Trump, and all of these guys vote Biden, but one of them votes Biden and Trump, invalidating the vote and still comes out the same. You see how the splitting hairs problem could get so fine-tuned that you couldn't make it work. And of course, that person could choose to vote randomly in a bad way. They could still technically argue. Electors possess the legal prerogative to vote as they wish by law, or by tradition they never do so. They also never do any form of substantive discussion like you would need to do a splitting hairs thing or debate about who should be the president, because in most states, it's illegal for them to do anything other than act as a delivery boy. The status quo is, not all states, again, it's not uniform, they're delivery boys. They don't have a vote. They deliver our vote. This is a majority of the states right now. That means the majority of the states have already decided that the electors cannot be faithless. By nature, they're not needed anymore. And again, they were literally a representative, temporarily a state representative that would go and vote for us. But again, what if it's a splitting hairs situation? What if we still had it to where they would end up with President Trump and Vice President Hillary, or President Biden and Vice President Trump? After significant constitutional, legislative, and political upheaval, the states and D.C. appoint 538 electors. Winners are set strictly according to outcome by the people, and they speak for the rest of us. Except that the electors still have the old rules are still there. They can still be faithless. You know, sort of like I can move my ear, you know, a vestigial organ that can be cut off. Ouch. This is why I want it to be a popular vote only. It eliminates the idea of this discussion, which was used as a stalling tactic when Hillary lost. A bunch of people said, we want you to vote faithless. They didn't. Again, their states made it illegal. Most states make it impossible, but not all. And then finally, the vice president, each time the election happens, has to openly acknowledge who won and who lost. And while they can argue that the votes were inaccurately counted or whatever, well, there's some question here. Back in the old days when it was Pony Express, they're not really allowed to do that now. But they do that to stand up and be annoying. But they're not allowed to make it to where the election can't finish. You can't stop the election. And no, the vice president does not have the right to ignore all this. It's one of the people. There's a conflict of interest. It's one of the people that's being voted for and voted out. So, again, I just spent almost 7.5 minutes explaining how the system used to be. You wouldn't want it like that now. And how it is now. I don't want it that way either. And really, this is a representative for the federal government, our representative to the rest of the world. Now, the argument might go, well, we need to balance the issues for the states' rights. No, we don't. It's only screwed up a couple of times, and each time it's caused more harm than good, honoring the state's ability to balance it out. But then again, having the population of Washington, D.C. somehow outvote Texas shouldn't be able to happen. But the Electoral College allows this almost. No, it does. The state of Texas is huge. Alaska's huge, but the population in Alaska is small. The population of Texas is bigger. The population in one of our tiny little states on the East Coast is much bigger. Because they're a state, they get more power than the whole population of maybe Texas and Alaska. Ohio can do that. And again, splitting hairs things, double voting from each person. And again, I want to point out, unless you're in an unusual state, except for the districting that people manipulate, whoever's in charge can manipulate how the votes are counted by moving the districts around by gerrymandering, or gerrymandering as I call it. Most votes in your cities, counties, and states are done by popular vote to make it to where manipulating the numbers doesn't do anything. Changing districts doesn't do anything. And I want to point out that the easiest way to win an election is to reduce the number of people voting and just make sure there's a loyal population that goes through all the hoops you set up, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, so they get elected. Now we're at the 9-minute mark, and I have to state again, yes, Donald Trump lost the last election to Joe Biden. And no, there isn't any question about the vote. And yes, YouTube will flag the video anyway because YouTube doesn't pay attention to facts. And neither do trolls. I asked a person after they said a previous video where I explained this was cringy, why? Do you not want my vote to count? All the person would say is, no, that's not it. That's not what they said. They said, your reply just now is incredibly misleading. No, it's not. I don't want my vote invalidated because my state doesn't have as many. Some are more equal than others. Ohio is more equal than you and I. But the point is, the state doesn't have as many votes as you and I. Some are more equal than others. 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 Some are more equal t If you had proper consideration of how originally the Constitution set up the U.S. as being a federation of semi-sovereign states more than a monolithic nation, you'd understand why your reply just now was incredibly misleading. It isn't misleading. It's not a leading argument either. I'm asking you whether or not you want my vote invalidated. Or do you want it to count? I want you to positively state that as an American, my vote should count. You're refusing to do so. Let's move on and see if you're continuing with this. Maybe you're not. This isn't even accounting for those states who use demographics engineering to inflate the numbers of eligible voters. You mean letting people vote? Everybody's eligible to vote unless otherwise noted. If you're above a certain age and you're a human being in the United States and of sound mind and body, everyone has the right to vote, as long as they're an American citizen. Then you invoke this. Illegal immigrants having anchor babies. Several politicians that ran for president on the Republican side were anchor babies, or had a dad that was an anchor baby, or a grandfather that was an anchor baby. That's not what we're discussing. Immigrants are not allowed to vote unless they're naturalized citizens and they're legal immigrants. This is a distraction. You're deflecting. And no, California doesn't let illegal aliens vote. They let them get identification cards, so they're not undocumented illegal aliens. They're documented illegal aliens. Oh, well, you don't want to say that because Tucker Carlson has to be worshipped in his loincloth. This also affects the electoral college system. The entire point of the electoral college is to keep states in check with each other. No, actually, it's mostly to prevent them from going to war against each other. Remember the war between the states? Civil War? The war on slavery? Whatever name you want to give it? Some of the states didn't like the outcome of a vote and decided to secede. The electoral college sometimes is argued to be a method to keep the South from trying to rise again. The South is a loser country group. As for the semi-sovereign states, a federation, this is like people yelling the word socialist or communist and not looking up the fucking words. Now, do I believe that you're being insulting towards me or telling me I don't have the right to vote? You refuse to answer the question. You said what my response is incredibly misleading. No, it fucking isn't. Me stating literally how it was originally and how it is now is not misleading. And I do that in virtually every video. The video you're commenting under, however, had to be redacted and censored because YouTube decided it must be censored. And now we deal with YouTube, the big elephant fucker in the room. Even me quoting Constitution Center or literally a copy of the U.S. Constitution can get me flagged these days if it mentions certain subject matter. YouTube is censoring everything and being cunts about it. I'm going to post this video in full on BitChute with a full description and title. I have to post a no-word censored version on YouTube. If you happen along this, it'll be amazing, because if you're trying to look up the subject matter, YouTube does not want you to find it. They want you to find news reports and reports from official sources and conspiracy theorists that they don't flag. The only way to keep a lie from going halfway around the world by next morning, or in 4 seconds, is to make sure a bunch of people are counteracting it by posting facts that you can look up through citations. Me posting a link to Wikipedia can get me flagged if it has certain keywords in it. Our First Amendment is under attack by corporations on a constant basis. Welcome to a free and open discussion. If this gets my channel completely killed, that proves my point. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck with that. And to this person who commented, unless your statements fall in line with actual recorded history, no. And again, one side of the equation keeps saying, I'm not going to talk to you about your vote counting, and stormed the Capitol to try to prevent the vote from counting when it was a ceremony, and even when after their vice president they preferred. One side keeps lashing out at everybody, stating facts. The other side just keeps posting facts and getting flagged off the net. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck with that second time.